All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to our June 22nd, 2021 Best Practice webinar. Glad you could join us today. We are recording this meeting, so if you miss it or if you need a few parts sent back to you or for review, you'll be able to access that from the website probably later today, maybe tomorrow morning. Today's presentation will feature Vic Jarvis. He's going to give us an update on the new GPRA measures that are connected to the 21st Century Learning Center grant. Just a friendly reminder, if you could please mute yourself just to cut down on background noise. If you have questions at any time, you can unmute and ask those verbally, or you can also use the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat today on Vic's behalf, and then Vic's going to be doing the screen sharing and so on and so forth. So again, thanks everyone for joining. And now I will go ahead and mute myself and turn it over to Vic for the presentation.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this. Okay, this is our update on the new GPRA measures. And this actually started way back in March when they brought the states together to talk about the final pieces. We've been working on this for several years to change those measures so they would better reflect the real work that goes on in after-school programs. So these are the things we're going to talk about. You know, why GPRA, a little overview of the measures, a timeline of the new transition, detail of each of the measures, and we'll talk about training, templates, and support. And then at the end, we'll have questions. GPRA stands for the Government Performance and Result Act, and it covers a lot of government programs, not just ours, but we gather this data and it's annually put into a report that goes to Congress, and then Congress reviews our funding every year. And this data has kept us funded despite calls for eliminating this program. So data is a good thing. So we're going to replace the 14 old GPRA measures that we're currently working with, and this is the last year, and we're reducing that down to 5 GPRA measures. And these new GPRA measures focus on improvement rather than proficiency. You know, it always was bothersome for me when I would see programs that would take a student that maybe was 2 grade levels behind in reading, and they would get them up an entire grade level, but they still couldn't count them as proficient because they were just a little bit below proficiency. Now we're going to be able to measure that improvement, and that's going to make our data look better. Okay, the new measures are focused on academic achievement. So they're looking at some specific grades as well. So they're taking a sample. So you don't have to do every single grade. And notice that for the academic achievement, they're looking at grades 4 through 8 on language arts, reading, and also 4 through 8 improvement in math. So that's going to be a little easier than what we've done in the past. Although we're going to have to enlist the district because they need to know the growth on state assessments. And then the second GPRA measure is going to be grade point average. And that's focusing on secondary students, 7 through 8 and 10 through 12. I don't know why they left out 9 and 11, but they did, so we won't worry about those. Keep in mind that this is a sample. And for whatever reason, they chose to just select a few grades, and that's okay. We'll still have the entire spectrum, but we're going to report the grade point average. And when they say unweighted, that just means we're not going to do any additional calculations. So it's pretty easy to do grade point if you use the A being 4, the B being 3, the C being 2, and the D being 1 grade point. Then the third is going to be the percentage of youth grades 1 through 12 that participated during the school year in summer. And we're looking at attendance improvement. So that's another thing that I think we're going to do well on. The fourth measure focuses on behavior. So we're going to look at all the kids, grades 1 through 12, that attend the program during the summer that experienced a decrease in school suspensions compared to the previous year. And everybody has this information. It's put into the student information system. So, this is why you're going to have to get with the person in the district that has access to that to get that information. And then the last one is student engagement and learning. And we're going to look at a percentage of students, and we're only going to do grades 1 through 5 who participate in the programming and demonstrate an improvement in teacher-reported engagement and learning. Okay. And for Iowa, we're going to define teacher reported as a staff member who acts in the role of a teacher for that after school program. You may have somebody that comes in from a local college that does a physical fitness program and gets the kids all excited and engaged about those activities. They might have a soccer club and they really like that. Well, that, college student could report on the improvement. And we're going to do this with a survey, just like we've always done that. But it's going to be a little bit shorter because we're only looking at one thing about improvement in engagement with learning. So overall, I think these are some big improvements over the 14 measures that we used to have. Okay. Make sure that you're talking with your district folks to ensure that you update your data sharing agreement. And keep in mind, when you guys sign the application for this funding, we ask for the superintendent and the building principals to sign a release, an assurance, and that's the initial data sharing agreement. If nothing else, if there's an issue, that gives me the ability to contact the superintendent and say, hey, what's going on? We need this data for this federal program, and we've got, somebody that's holding it up. That will usually clear things up. Another thing is that a data person may try to say, oh, we can't give you that data because of FERPA. Well, we've checked it, and FERPA allows us to get student identifiable data. However, we don't need it. We're only reporting aggregate data. So there's, this data pull that we're asking for doesn't require any student identifiable information. We're taking the number of all those students in those sets that we need to report, and they're going to need to go through and generate those reports for us. So, we've got everything covered in terms of not violating FERPA. Okay, here's a little implementation timeline, and we're in 2021 now, so we're dealing with the last year for the old GPRA, and right now we're reporting summer 2020 in that APR system right now, and then we're going to move to fall. In the fall, we'll be a year behind, and then we're going to wrap it up in the late fall with spring, and then we'll be done. We'll finish this up the end of December. I'll finalize the data, and then we'll begin with the new GPRA measures. So Um, right now, we should be, getting ready to gather that new GPRA data, and we are working on it. We've got some support things for you, and it's going to be a change, but I think that's going to be hard the first year because it's new. But once we get used to it, I think it's going to be a much better fit for our programs. So right now, we're collecting that summer data, and then in the fall, we'll be working on collecting the new GPRA data. And then later fall, we'll be doing the final window for spring 20. Well, yeah, and I got a little bit sidetracked here. So next year in the spring, we'll be completely on the new GPRA. And as soon as that window opens, I'll send an email about the windows. That usually happens a little bit before spring, usually in February, that I send out an email to everyone to let you know what the new window is. Okay, so things in the APR that are not changing. There's still going to be the grantee overview, the detail about your centers, the 16 the categories of activities, staffing, and participation. The things that are going to change is we're going to be telling a more comprehensive story, and we're going to be doing this in every state, and all the students are going to be reported, not just regular attendees. In the past, if you ran a summer program and half of your kids, you ran it for 30 days and half of them only attended 29 days, you couldn't report half of your students, and that made it look like you weren't doing a good job. We've had a lot of conversations, and I've been advocating that that's not a way of capturing all of our kids. When you've got kids that have a history of chronic absenteeism, that's not going to change overnight. They're going to come more often, but they're still going to have days where, it's hard for them to come to school for whatever reason. So we need to have some wiggle room in our programs. And I've always advocated 35, 40 days a summer. But now we're going to count them all in the new system. Now, one of the big changes is we're going to report the hours rather than the days, and we'll give you some more detail on that. It's not you won't have to change how you do your attendance. It's just how we report it in the system that's going to be different. And there's a really easy fix for that. Now, one thing that's really positive is the frequency of reporting. Instead of doing it 3 times a year, next year, we're only going to be doing it twice a year. And the bonus is we're going to do half the data at the first part, and then we're going to finish it up on the second instead of reporting everything, the whole data over and over again. So that's going to be nice. It should be a big relief on entering all that. Okay. So we're not going to have any more term-based deadlines. And each state's going to be able to set and communicate state deadlines. And I don't change those. I just use the entire window. Some states, what they like to do is shorten that window and get in there and, do some analysis, but it doesn't take me any time. I download the data before we submit it every year. So I have a little PDF record of what you did in the APR. For a larger state like California, where they've got, a couple thousand people, because in California, everybody Every elementary and middle school has an after-school program. It takes them a while, so that's why they have to shorten that window. But we don't have to do that here. So always we report our data 1 year behind. And that's the same thing with local evaluation. It's always a year behind. So when you get a new grant, you don't report data that first year, but you report it the second year. And then you have to report the final year, even though you won't be getting funding for a program, you're going to report what you did that year, that final year when you had your funding. Okay, so starting next year, we'll have the system set up by early summer, and the data reporting will be midsummer. I'm thinking July or in August, where you're going to report activities, staffing, and participation. And then by the end of the calendar year, you'll report your completed academic outcomes, your reading and your math. So the feds refer to the small p guidance on what we do differently in states. And, initially they had a lot of these hourly bands for reporting. And we had our meeting and I raised my hand and I says, who in the world, came up with this? Because we never talked about this as states before. And why are you having so many bands? Is this, who thought about that? And so then the next day they lowered those bands. So they lowered it down to 6 bands. And that was unusual because the feds, it usually takes them so much time. This happened the very next day when we were having our meetings. And it's a little different to look at it in hours rather than days. But you're still going to be able to collect your attendance normally. You don't need to buy any new system or anything like that, because we've got a nice table that we can convert that. And here it is. So if it's less than 15, that means it's less than an hour, less than a week, because 3 hours a day, 5 days a week is 15 hours. If it's more than a week, then it's more than 15 hours, but less than 45. If it's more than a month, it's more than 45 and less than 90. If it's more than 2 months, then it's more than 90 and less than 180. If it's more than 3 months, then it's more than 180 and less than 270. And if it's more than 4 months, it's more than 270. And we in Iowa require you to do 60 hours of contact time a month. So if your program's open for 10 months, you're going to be logging in 600 hours. Well, maybe not quite 600 because of Christmas and spring break, but certainly, over 400 or 500 hours. So we won't have a problem with a lot of kids getting more than 270. And the kids that all, come just a couple of times and then maybe they move to another district, we're still going to be able to count them, which is a good thing. So in a nutshell, I see these new measures as giving us more ways to showcase our success. So now let's go in a little bit more detail with these measures. So measure number 1 is academic achievement. And the first part of this is taking a look at reading. Then the second part is taking a look at math. And we're looking at growth, not proficiency, but growth. So here's one example of how you can get this. So if you had 12 students in the grades 4 through 8, of those students, those who showed growth in reading, you had 10 maybe, 10 out of 12. And so breaking this down a little further, you reported 12 students, and of the 12, how many showed growth? Your state would need to define what constitutes growth. And we're going to use the growth that's already in the state assessment for this. So we are not going to reinvent the wheel for this program. We're just going to use what they already have in there. So now this may be a challenge for the first year because of the fact that they're not doing state assessments. But if that's the case, we'll have something in there that says there was no state assessment, and we'll just do the other measures as we have data. So if you're a community-based organization, a CBO, you want to have a data sharing agreement in place because it's always a little harder for you guys. And if you have a problem as a CBO, contact me so that we can improve the communications and we can get you the data that you need. And some states, you know, they have systems where they collect all that data. But if you look at the reports, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that at the state level. And again, we're not collecting individual data, just aggregate data. Okay, measure number 2 is the GPA for secondary students. If you have only elementary programs in your cohorts, you don't have to worry about this. You'll just put down this doesn't apply. There will be a little checkbox. Although some of our programs, they might have a middle school involved. Some of them may have a high school. And then you're going to have to do the GPA. And keep in mind, unweighted means we're not going to do any additional math calculations. We're keeping it as simple as possible. So if you had 12 students in your grades, and of the 12, the students that had a GPA of less than 3 in the previous school year, maybe you had 5, and the system would then say, of the 5 who were under 3 in their GPA, how many improved? And maybe 3 out of 5 improved. So again, the system will let us accommodate any state definitions for GPA, but you know, we may have to convert letter grades, and all the student information systems, I believe, in Iowa are using letter grades, so it shouldn't be too difficult. And here's a table showing the conversion. So, you know, an A is 4, B is 3, a C is 2, and of course a D is a 1. So GPA is a form of grade data. And in the current, the old GPRA, I allowed you to use your choice of grade data, state assessment data, or, you know, teacher reported data, just so that we could get in our data in any way, shape, or form, because it's been a challenge to get any kind of data right now. But moving forward, it's going to be a little more restrictive on how we get that data. We'll all be doing the same data, so that should give us a little bit more accurate picture. And basically what we're wanting to do is the students who improve their GPA from the previous year. Okay, the measure number 3, we're looking at school day attendance. And this is for kids grades 1 through 12. So we're only leaving out kindergartners, and for whatever reason, I don't know why they didn't want to do kindergarten, but you know, They're looking at those who had an attendance rate below 90% in the previous school year and then improved their attendance. So, you know, some of our schools, you got a lot of kids that have improved their attendance, but especially new programs starting up, you should be able to show some definite improvement along these areas. All right, so let's say you reported 250 kids in your program, and how many kids had an attendance less than 90% in the previous year? You would answer 20, and the system would set of the 20, how many had an attendance rate, you know, that improved, and maybe you only had 3. I would say, though, that example is a little low. Typically, we would see maybe 15, I think, that would improve, because what I see and what I hear from talking with folks is that this after-school program causes attendance to go up dramatically. Okay, GPRA measure number 4 is behavior. And in the past, how we did this was we asked teachers about behavior. We did a survey. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the student information system. You know, and that's going to be better data, because, you know, sometimes a student may get on a teacher's nerves and they may, you know, they may not accurately report, you know, behavior, where the student information system is stuff that the principal enters in, and it goes into the system. And we're looking at a decrease from the previous year. And that's another thing that I have heard from all the programs, that there's usually a decrease in behavior issues when you put in an after-school program. So I think that that's going to give us some good, solid data moving forward in the future. All right, so if you had 250 students in your program, and how many had in-school suspensions last year? Maybe you had 20, and the system will then say, of those 20 students who had suspensions, how many had a decrease? And again, I think this example number is low. I think we would find maybe 15 or 17 students that improved behaviors. So now if the school then doesn't use in-school suspension data, then again, you would not have anything to report. Okay, the final measure, measure number 5, student engagement. And what we're looking at here, again, is just elementary. So if you're running a secondary program, you don't have to enter this data. And it's participating in the programming school year and summer who demonstrated improvement in teacher-reported engagement and learning. So if you had 150 students in grades 1 through 5, of these students, how many demonstrated an improvement in learning? And you would enter maybe 105 improved. So again, in Iowa, small p, we're going to decide that any adult who works with kids and provides them programming, you can survey them and ask about, did the kids demonstrate improvement and engagement in learning? And we'll do this with a survey. So this is going to be the only measure that you're not going to have to go to the district data person, because we'll do that via a survey. Okay, what's next? This is one of our technical assistants that we've promised, and we're working on a training calendar that's going to come from the feds. Right now they're training state folks, and then pretty soon they'll be having some webinars for grantees, and I'll send those emails out when I get them. So they've got a big plan for training. And right now we're down at the bottom doing SEA training, and the next thing they're going to have technical lead training. And they're working on a special module for grantee entry states, which is us. And as soon as that stuff is finalized and they send me the email, I will forward it on to you guys. So here's my contact information, and let's see if anyone has any questions now.
Oh, thanks, Vic. So again, feel free to unmute or go ahead and use the chat. I do want to point out that Nikki did ask the question of if these slides would be shared, and they will be.
Yes,
so Vic,
of course.
When you get a chance, Vic, I'll take those slides and we'll go ahead and get those posted to our website, but we'll also just share out through an email with the network as well. So what questions do people have for Vic this morning? Again, feel free to unmute or you can use that chat.
We've got a lot of experts in the APR, I guess, so they're pretty comfortable.
I don't have a question, but I'll just plug the evaluation committee who's working on some tools and resources for this change. So we also have a template in the works for the data to exist in a format that will be useful for entry.
Thank you.
Yep.
I love the sound of children.
Yeah, she's my sidekick for all these meetings.
Hi, Vic. This is Joel here in Clinton. You talked briefly about contact time. Are we including before school hours in the contact time as well?
Yes, if you have before school hours as part of your program, that can count. That's usually about an hour before school.
Yep.
So if you do 2 hours after school, then that's how you get your 3.
Okay.
And not to worry, if you start looking at that and you come up short, you also can count your field trips. So if you're doing a field trip and you're going out and you're doing an extra hour, then that counts towards your contact hours as well. And the reason we do 60 hours was, how the federal rules are. Well, in the past, if you did something on a Saturday, you had a hard time getting reimbursement because they said, oh, it's a Monday through Friday program. So working with the feds, we got ours officially changed to 60 hours a month. Now you want to go somewhere on a Saturday and do a half day, you can, and you won't have any problem getting your reimbursement.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, I've got something else to share with you guys.
Take it away, Vic.
Here it is. I'm going to show you the training version here. There we go. Okay, this is explaining FERPA, and it's more for our community groups that sometimes have difficulty getting the data that they need. So we've got an explanation of FERPA. that, it's protecting the right of student privacy. And that's a good thing. Students' data and information needs to be protected. And we comply 100% with FERPA regulations. We want to make sure that that information is kept confidential. And however, with this grant, we also need to make sure that we have everybody that needs to be on board, at least the big decision makers signing an assurance. And in the grant application, we have the superintendent and the building principal for each building signs an assurance. And it includes data sharing in that. And so here's the blue box that I had added for making this available to other states. And then I cite FERPA showing that we do qualify to get student level information because number one, this is a federal grant, and number two, we're reporting that information that's required by the federal grant. So we are covered under FERPA. However, we do not need student level data for anything that we report. We only need aggregated data. So we're establishing, that we know about FERPA, we understand it, and it, really doesn't apply because we're not asking for student level data. And then what this document does is provides a little detail so those district data folks can get an advanced update of what they need to make in a report available to our program, starting with GPRA measure 1, the percentage of students. And this data should be in a student information system. And, we've got 3 different ones, but they all operate the same way. No matter which one you're using, they can pull this report. It might take them, a while to figure out. And they may ask for a list of the kids that are in the after school and summer program so that they can narrow it down, because it's the which kids are in an after school program may not be in the student information system. That we may have to supply to the data person. And then the second one is the percentage of students in secondary who've attended and has their GPA improved. And a lot of our programs are primarily elementary. So if that's the case, this measure you won't have to worry about. And I've even included a link here about how to do unweighted GPA, but there's also a quick conversion table here. And then GPRA measure 3 deals with all grades and improvement in attendance over the previous year for those who were below 90%. So we're looking at those kids that have chronic attendance issues, and we want to see if this program is helping them to improve. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to see some good numbers when we start getting this data. And then number 4 is kids who attended the program who experienced a decrease in school suspensions compared to the previous year. And this information, again, is in the student information system, and we only need aggregate data. So we're not going to, ask them to identify the kids that have been suspended. We just want to know the numbers. Did you have 30, 40 kids that were suspended last year? And of those 30, 40, how many improved? So kids' private information is protected. Then the final one is the participation one. And now this is going to be done via survey. And so the student, the data person in the district will not have to worry about this. This is the only one that you will do independently. And I think we can handle this. It's just one question rather than in the past, we used to have, geez, a dozen survey questions, and we used to have to do it for the classroom teachers. And sometimes the classroom teacher didn't always see the improvement because a lot of the kids attended this after school program because they liked it much better than school. And it took a while before they started making the connection that if they could do good in the after school program, they could also do better in school. So I think this is going to be another way we can get more accurate data on how we're helping kids. And then a little bit about the GPRA for the data person to explain that, yes, we have to report this data to Congress, and that I've also included federal statute, EDGAR, that says that we have the right to access documents or any record of the non-federal entity that pertains to this award. So, that should help streamline the collection of data in our programs. And you guys are going to be you're free to copy the contents of this document and share it out. And I think it'll be particularly helpful for our community groups. And that I'm going to send to Crystal, and she'll post it on to the website and share it with all of you guys. So anybody have any questions on that?
Nothing from the peanut gallery here, Vic.
I would prefer to call them the brain trust.
Much better description, yes. So, all right. Well, folks, if there are no further questions from Vic, and Vic, if you don't have anything else to share, it looks like we're giving people the gift of about 15 minutes of their time back.
It's okay, they can use it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to thank you all for attending this webinar, and hopefully if this will make the process a little bit smoother, and hope you guys have a wonderful summer, and I hope you can recruit a lot of kids because they really need to be and having a nice summer program and experience. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so with that being said, I'll go ahead and thank everybody for coming today, and I'm going to stop the recording.